and I never will. Do I need to tell you why I never question my husband? No, ma'am. The staff had to know that the Ericas were beaten and were not permitted to turn off their pain. I thought you'd understand, Glenda. We're all in the same quicksand, aren't we? Whether we're the provisioner or the wife. Uncomfortable with this intimacy, Glenda said, "There's no store open at this hour, selling boys' clothing, but—" "Yes?" Fear rose in Glenda's eyes, and her previously placid face tightened with worry. "There are many articles of boys' and girls' clothing here in the house." "Here? But there are no children here." Glenda's voice fell to a whisper. "You must never tell." "Tell what? Tell whom?" "Never tell Mr. Helios." Erica pressed the battered wife's sympathy play as far as she probably dared. "Glenda, I am beaten not just for my shortcomings, but for any reason that suits my Maker. I am quite sure I would be beaten for being the bearer of bad news. All secrets are safe with me." Glenda nodded. "Follow me." Also off the south hall on the ground floor were a series of storage rooms. One of the largest of these was a 20 by 18-foot walk-in cooler, where a dozen of the highest quality fur coats were stored. Mink, ermine, Arctic fox. Victor had no sympathy for the anti-fur movement, as he was engaged in the much more important anti-human movement. In addition to the rack of coats, there were numerous cabinets containing clothes of all kinds that would not fit even in Erica's enormous closet in the master suite. By having a series of wives who were identical in every detail, Victor spared himself the expense of purchasing new wardrobes. But he did want his Erica to be at all times stylishly attired, and he did not expect her to choose from a limited garment collection. From several drawers in the farthest corner of the room, Glenda nervously produced children's clothing, article after article, both for boys and girls in various sizes. "Where did all this come from?" Erica asked. "Mrs. Helios, if he learns about it, he'll terminate Cassandra. And this is the only thing that's ever made her happy. It's made us all happy. Her daring, her secret life. She gives the rest of us a little hope." "You know my position on being the bearer of bad news." Glenda buried her face in a striped polo shirt. For a moment, Erica thought that the woman must be crying, for the shirt trembled in her hands, and her shoulders shook. Instead, Glenda inhaled deeply, as if seeking the scent of the boy who had worn the shirt, and when she looked up from it, her face was a portrait of bliss. "For the past 5 weeks, Cassandra has been sneaking off the estate at night to kill old race children." Cassandra, the laundress. "Oh," Erica said, "I see." She couldn't wait any longer to be told the killing could at last begin. "The rest of us. We so admire her nerve, but we haven't been able to find it in ourselves." "And what of the bodies?" "Cassandra brings them back here so we can share in the excitement. Then the trash men who take other bodies to the dump, they take the children too, no questions asked. Like you said, we're all in this quicksand together." "But you keep the clothes." "You know what the dormitory is like. Not an inch of extra space. We can't store the clothes there, but we can't bear to get rid of them. We take these clothes out some nights, take them over to the dormitory and, play with them. And oh, it's very wonderful, Mrs. Helios, thinking of the dead kids and listening to Cassandra tell how each one happened. It's the best thing ever, the only good thing we've ever had." Erica knew that something profound must be happening to her when she found Glenda's story disturbing, even creepy, and when she hesitated at the prospect of dressing the poor, sweet troll in the clothes of murdered children. Indeed, that she should think murdered instead of merely dead had to be an indication of a revolution in her thinking. She was torn by something like pity for Cassandra, Glenda, and the others on the staff, by a quiet horror at the idea of Cassandra stalking the most defenseless of the old race, and by compassion for the murdered, toward whom she had been programmed to feel nothing but envy, anger, and hatred. Her actions on behalf of Jocko crossed the line that Victor had drawn for her, for all of them, in the aforementioned quicksand. The curious sense of companionship that had developed so quickly between her and the little guy should have been beyond her emotional range. Even as the friendship grew, she recognized that it might signify a pending interruption of function, like the one that William the butler had experienced. She was allowed compassion, humility, and shame, as the others were not, but only so that Victor might be more thrilled by her pain and anguish. Victor didn't intend that the finer feelings of his Ericas should benefit anyone but himself, or that anyone else should have the opportunity to respond to his wife's tender attentions with anything other than the contempt and brutality with which he answered them. To Glenda she said, "Go back to the dormitory. I'll select what I need from these and put the rest away." "And never tell him?" "Never tell him," Erica confirmed. Glenda started to turn away, but then she said, "Do you think maybe—" "Maybe what, Glenda?" "Do you think maybe the end is coming soon?" "Do you mean the end of the old race, once and forever, the killing of them all?" The provisioner searched Erica's gaze and then turned her face up to the ceiling as tears welled in her eyes. In a voice thick with fear, she said, "There's got to be an end, you know. There's really got to be." "Look at me," Erica said. Obedient as her program required, Glenda met her mistress's eyes again. With her fingers, Erica wiped the tears from the provisioner's face. "Don't be afraid." "It's that or rage. I'm worn out by rage." Erica said, "An end is coming soon." "You know?" "Yes, very soon." "How? What end?" "In most cases, not all ends are desirable, but in this case, any end will do. Don't you think?" The provisioner nodded almost imperceptibly. "May I tell the others?" "Will knowing help them?" "Oh, yes, ma'am. Life's always been hard, you know, but lately harder." "Then by all means, tell them." The provisioner seemed to regard Erica with the nearest thing to gratitude that she could feel. After a silence she said, "I don't know what to say." "Neither of us does," said Erica. "That's how we are." "Goodbye, Mrs. Helios." "Goodbye, Glenda." The provisioner left the storage room, and Erica closed her eyes for a moment, unable to look at the many items of apparel strewn on the floor around her. Then she opened her eyes and knelt among the clothes. She selected those that might fit her friend. The garments of the executed were still garments, and if the universe was not, as Victor said, a meaningless chaos, if it were possible for anything to be sacred, surely these humble items, worn by martyred innocence, were hallowed, and might provide her friend not only with a disguise, but also with protection of a higher kind. Chapter 55. Duke led them across a wide earthen rampart, between vast pits of trash, through the dump, as if he knew the way. With the moon and the stars sequestered behind ominous clouds, Crosswoods, for the most part, lay in darkness, although a few small fires burned out there in the black remoteness. Carson and Michael followed the dog, in the company of Nick Frigg and Gunny Electo, who with flashlights picked out potholes and places where the crumbling brink might be treacherous, as if every detail of this terrain was engraved in the memory of each. "I'm a Gamma," Nick said, "or I was, and Gunny here, she's an Epsilon." "Or was," she said. "Now I'm reborn, freeborn, and I don't hate any more. I'm not afraid any more." "It's like we've been living with bands of iron around our heads, and now they're cut away," "The pressure gone," said Nick. Carson didn't know what to make of their strange born-again declarations. She still expected one of them suddenly to come at her with no more goodwill than a buzzsaw. "Sign, sink, spoon, spade, soup, stone, spinach, sparklers, soda, sand, seed, sex, sex!" Gunny laughed with delight that she had found the word she wanted. "Man, oh man, I wonder what it'll be like the next time the whole dump gang gets sexed up together, going at each other every which way, but none of us angry, nobody punching or biting, just doing all the better kind of stuff to each other. It should be interesting." "It should," Nick said. "Interesting. Okay, folks, right up here we're going to go down a ramp into the west pit. See the torches and oil lamps out there a ways? That's where Deucalion's waiting." "He's waiting out there by the big hole," Gunny said. Nick said, "We're all going down the big hole again." "This is some night," Gunny declared. "Some crazy night," Nick agreed. "What a night, huh, Nick?" "What a night," Nick agreed. "Down the big hole again." "It's sure a big hole." "And we're going down it again." "We are for sure, the big hole." "Mother of all gone wrongs." "Something to see." "I'm just all up," said Gunny. "I'm all up, too," Nick said. Grabbing at Nick's crotch, Gunny said, "I bet you are." "You know I am." "You know I know you are." "Don't I know?" Carson figured she was no more than 2 conversational exchanges from either bolting back to the car or emptying the urban sniper into both of them. Michael saved her sanity by breaking the rhythm and asking Nick, "How do you live with this stench?" "How do you live without it?" Nick asked. From the top of the rampart, they descended a slope of earth into the west pit. Trash crunched and crackled and rustled underfoot, but it was well compacted and didn't shift much. More than a dozen people stood with Deucalion, but he was a head taller than the tallest of them. He wore his long black coat, the hood thrown back. His half-broken and tattooed face, uplit by torchlight, was not as disturbing as it ought to have been in this setting, under these circumstances. In fact, he had an air of calm certainty and unflinching resolve that reminded Carson of her father, who had been a military man before becoming a detective. Deucalion projected that competence and integrity that motivated men to follow a leader into battle, which apparently was what they were soon to do. Michael said to him, "Hey, big guy, you're standing there like we're in a rose garden. How do you tolerate this stench?" "Controlled synesthesia," Deucalion explained. "I convince myself to perceive the malodors as colors, not smells. I see us standing in a weave of rainbows." "I'm going to hope you're pulling my chain." "Carson," Deucalion said, "there's someone here who wants to meet you." From behind Deucalion stepped a beautiful woman in a dress stained and crusted with filth. "Good evening, Detective O'Connor." Recognizing the voice from the phone, Carson said, "Mrs. Helios." "Yes, Erica 4. I apologize for the condition of my dress. I was murdered little more than a day ago and buried in garbage. My darling Victor didn't think to send me here with a supply of moist towelettes and a change of clothes." Chapter 56. After leaving the children's clothes with Jocko in the library, Erica went to the master suite, where she quickly packed a single suitcase for herself. She didn't clean up the blood in the vestibule. She should have wrapped Christine's body in a blanket and called the new race trash collectors, who conveyed corpses to Crosswoods, but she did not. After all, if she went to a window and looked northwest, the sky would be on fire, and worse was coming. Maybe it would still matter if authorities found a murdered housekeeper in the mansion, or maybe not. Anyway, Even if the discovery of Christine's body turned out to be a problem for Victor, it wasn't an issue for Erica. She suspected that she would never again see this house or New Orleans, or that she would not much longer be Victor's wife. Only hours ago, she handled with aplomb, if not indifference, such macabre episodes as a butler chewing off his fingers. But now the mere presence of a dead beta in the bedroom disturbed her both for reasons she understood and for reasons she was not yet able to define. She put her suitcase at the foot of the bed, and she chose a smaller piece of luggage in which to pack everything that Victor wanted from the safe. The existence of the walk-in vault had not been disclosed to Erica during her in-tank education. She learned about it only minutes earlier when Victor told her how to find it. In one corner of his immense closet, which was as large as the formal dining room downstairs, an alcove featured 3 floor-to-ceiling mirrors. After Victor dressed, he stepped into this space to consider the clothes he wore and to assess the degree to which his outfit achieved the effect he desired. Standing in this alcove, Erica spoke to her reflection. 1225 is 41. A voice recognition program in the house computer accepted those 5 words as the first part of a 2-sentence combination to the vault. The center mirror slid into the ceiling, revealing a plain steel door without hinges or handle or keyhole. When she said, 214 is 1031, she heard lock bolts disengage, and the door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. In addition to tall upper cabinets, the vault contained lower drawers, all measuring the same, 1 foot deep, 2 feet wide. Each of 3 walls held 12 drawers, numbered 1 through 36. From drawer 5, she withdrew 16 bricks of $100 bills and put them in the small suitcase. Each banded block contained $50,000, for a total of $800,000. Drawer 12 offered $250,000 worth of euros, and she emptied it. From drawer 16, she withdrew $1 million worth of bearer bonds, each valued at $50,000. Drawer 24 revealed numerous small gray velvet bags, featuring drawstring closures tied in neat bows. In these were precious gems, mostly diamonds of the highest quality. She scooped up all of the bags and dropped them in the suitcase. No doubt Victor maintained offshore bank accounts containing significant sums, held by such an intricate chain of shell companies and false names that no tax collector could link them to him. There he kept the larger part of his wealth. What Erica collected here, according to Victor's instructions, was his on-the-run money, which he might need if the current crisis could not be contained. Listening to him on the phone, she'd thought he should use the word would instead of might, and when instead of if, but she'd said nothing. With the suitcase, she returned to the mirrored alcove, faced the open vault door, and said, "Close and lock." The pneumatic door hissed shut. The bolts engaged. The mirror descended into place, bringing with it her reflection, as if it had previously taken her image into the ceiling. In the garage, Erica stowed both pieces of luggage in the cargo space of the GL 550. With a large cloth tote bag in which to carry their books, she returned to the library. In his new attire, Jocko looked less like Huckleberry Finn than like a mutant turtle from another planet, out of its shell and likely to pass for human only if everyone on Earth were struck blind. Although the faded blue jeans looked all right from the front, they sagged in the seat because the troll didn't have much of a butt. His thin, pale arms were longer than those of a real boy, so the long-sleeved T-shirt fell 3 inches short of his wrists. For the first time, Erica considered that Jocko had 6 fingers on each hand. He had adjusted the expansion strap on the back of the baseball cap to its full extension, making it big enough to fit him, and in fact, making it too big. The cap came over the tops of his gnarled ears, and he kept tipping it back to see out from under the bill. "It's not a funny hat," he said. "No, I couldn't find one here, and the funny hat store doesn't open until 9 o'clock.
Maybe they deliver earlier.
Stuffing Jocko's selection of books in the tote bag, she said, They don't deliver like a pizza shop.
A pizza would be a funnier hat than this. Let's get a pizza.
Don't you think wearing a pizza on your head would attract more attention than we want?
No, and the shoes don't work.
Even after taking the laces out, he had not been able to fit his wide feet comfortably in the sneakers. He said,
Anyway, Jocko walks way better barefoot, has a better grip, and if he wants to suck his toes, he doesn't have to undress them first.
His toes were nearly as long as fingers and had 3 knuckles each. Erica thought he must be able to climb like a monkey. You're probably well enough disguised if you stay in the car, she said, and if you slump in your seat, and if you don't look out the window when another car's passing us, and if you don't wave at anyone.
Can Jocko give them the finger?
She frowned. Why would you want to make obscene gestures at anyone?
You never know. Like, say it's a pretty night, big moon, stars all over, and say suddenly a woman's smacking you with a broom and a guy's beating your head with an empty bucket, shouting, What is it? What is it? What is it? You run away faster than they can run, and you want to shout something really smart at them, but you can't think of anything smart, so there's always the finger. Can Jocko give them the OK sign?
I think it's better if you keep your hands down and just enjoy the ride.
Can Jocko give them a thumbs up sign? Attaboy! Way to go! You done good.
Maybe the next time we go for a ride. Not tonight.
Can Jocko give them a power to the people fist?
I didn't know you were political. The tote bag bulged with books. Come on, we've got to get out of here.
Oh, wait, Jocko forgot. In his room.
There's nothing in your room that you'll need.
Be back in half a jiffy.
He snatched up one of the laces from the sneakers and, holding it between his teeth, somersaulted out of the library. When the troll returned a few minutes later, he was carrying a sack made from a pillowcase, tied shut with a shoelace. What's that? Erica asked.
Stuff.
What stuff?
Jocko's stuff.
All right. Let's go. In the garage at the GL 550, Jocko said,
You want me to drive?
Chapter 57. Judging by the quality of their excitement and the content of their conversations among themselves, Carson decided that most, if not all, of the people with torches and oil lamps were Epsilons, like Gunny Electo, and were workers at the landfill. In addition to Erica 4, however, 5 others of the new race, left for dead at Crosswoods but later resurrected, were Alphas, 4 men and a woman, who had been terminated by Victor for one reason or another. This was the group that called themselves the Dumpsters. Carson and Michael had been unnerved when one of the Dumpsters proved to be Bucky Gittro, the district attorney. He wasn't the one they had killed in Audubon Park, and he wasn't the original and fully human Bucky. He was instead the first replicant intended to replace Bucky. He'd been replaced himself by a second replicant, the one she and Michael had killed, when Victor decided that number 1 wasn't a sufficiently gifted mimic to pull off the impersonation of the district attorney. Apparently, all of these alphas had been returned to the first replicant intended to replace Bucky. He'd been replaced himself by a second replicant, the one she and Michael had killed, when Victor decided that number 1 wasn't a sufficiently gifted mimic to pull off the impersonation of the district attorney. Apparently, all of these alphas had been returned to life longer than Mrs. Helios. They had found water to wash themselves, and they wore reasonably clean if threadbare clothes, which perhaps they had salvaged from these many acres of refuse. Although she was the most recent to have been pulled back from the brink of oblivion, Erica 4 had been appointed to speak not only for herself, but also for the other 5 alphas, perhaps because she had been their tormentor's wife. She knew Victor well, his corrupted character and temper. Better than anyone, she might be able to identify the weakness most likely to render him vulnerable. Deucalion towered behind Erica, and as she brought Carson and Michael up to date, the landfill workers edged closer. None of what she said was news to them, but being the intellectual lower caste of the new race, they seemed to be easily enchanted. They were rapt, faces shining in the lambent firelight, like children gathered for story hour around a campfire. "The workers here have known something strange was happening under the trash fields," Erica said. "They've seen the surface rise and resettle, as if something sizable was traveling this way and that in the lower realms. They've heard haunting voices filtering up from below. Tonight, they saw it for the first time, and they call it the mother of all gone wrongs." A murmuring passed through the epsilons, whispered exclamations. Their faces revealed emotions that they of the new race should not have been able to feel: happiness, awe, and perhaps hope. "It started as a failed experiment, left here for dead, but in fact not fully dead," Erica continued. "A lightning strike in the dump enlivened it. Since then, it has evolved to become a wondrous being, an entity of indescribable beauty and profound moral purpose. Sometimes an alpha, presumed dead even by Victor, may yet contain an incandescent filament of life for a few days after an apparent death. If attended properly, that filament can be prevented from fading entirely and encouraged to grow brighter. As it brightens, this life force spreads through the alpha, returning him to consciousness and full function. What these epsilons call the mother of all gone wrongs, we call the resurrector. For as it was revived by lightning, it now revives us by sharing its own intensely bright life force." So closely gathered were the epsilons that their torches and oil lamps encircled Carson with shimmering orange light, and in this one small portion of the landfill, the night was as bright as a dawn sky painted with the sun's celebratory brush. "Not only does the resurrector restore the body, but it also heals the mind," said Erica 4. "From our programs, it strips out all of the encouragements to envy, hatred, and anger, and deletes as well the prohibitions against compassion, love, and hope. Tonight, it revealed itself to the landfill workers, and released them from all the programmed emotions that oppressed them, and gave to them the full range of emotions they had been denied." Skin prickling on the back of her neck, Carson recalled Gunny Electo's words. "The mother of all gone wrongs talked inside our heads." Michael shared her reservations. "No offense, but no matter how beautiful it might be, I'm basically freaked out by something that can get inside my head and change me." In the quivering torchlight, on the broken half of Deucalion's face, reflections of flames infused false life into the tattooed patterns, which seemed to flex and crawl across the awful concavities and the broken planes, across the knotted scars. He said, "It waits for us now in the tunnel. I went down a short while ago, and felt I was in the presence of a being that has no thinnest thread of malevolence in its weave. It will project certain thoughts to you, but it won't enter your mind against your wishes." "As far as you know," Michael qualified. "For 2 centuries I've had to bear witness to all forms of human wickedness," Deucalion said, "and cobbled together, as I was, from the bodies of sociopathic criminals, burdened with the brain of the vilest kind of murderer, I have a certain sensitivity to the presence of evil. There is none in this being." Carson heard the capital B that he put on the final word. And though his confidence somewhat reassured her, though her disquiet didn't swell into apprehension, she had misgivings about going into the tunnel to which he referred. Erica 4 said, The Resurrector will help us bring Victor to the justice he deserves. Indeed, I don't think we can bring him down without the assistance of this entity."
"If he flees here tonight, or in the early morning," Deucalion said, "as we expect he will when he learns of the fire at Mercy, we will have an opportunity that we must not fail to seize."
Under the reflected torchlight in his eyes, the more profound light of his embodied storm throbbed as it sometimes did. Carson wondered if, in his mind's ear, he heard the sky-splitting crack of the thunderbolt, or recalled the terror of his first minutes of unholy life.
"I believe the moment is rushing toward us," Deucalion said. "You need to meet the Resurrector, so we are ready and waiting for Victor when he arrives."
Carson looked at Michael, and he said, "So, it's down the big hole. This is some night, some crazy night. I'm just all up." Chapter 58. Somber thoughts distracted Victor from his driving, and the deserted state route, winding through lonely darkness, contributed to his bleak mood. Always before, when setbacks forced a change of venue on him, from Germany to Argentina, to the old Soviet, to China and elsewhere, he had been furious at the associates who had failed him, and at nature for her jealous guarding of the secrets of molecular biology, and her stubborn resistance to the incisive blade of his singular intelligence, but he had not lost hope. The short-lived project in Cuba, so promising, came to ruin because of one stupid peasant, a rabid cat, a treacherous set of stairs, and a wet bar of soap left on one of the treads for no reason that made sense. Yet he and Fidel remained friends, and Victor persevered in another country, certain of ultimate triumph. The interesting facility in North Korea, with the generous funding by a consortium of forward-thinking governments, should have been the place where the ultimate breakthroughs at last occurred. At his disposal was a virtually infinite supply of body parts from self-pitying political prisoners who preferred being carved up alive to enduring further prison meals. But how could he have foreseen that the dictator, a strutting rooster with a harem, would end up shooting the speed-grown clone of himself that Victor created at his request, when said clone developed a passion for his dangerous look-alike and extravagantly tongue-kissed him? Victor had escaped the country with his testicles only because he and the dictator had a mutual friend, one of the most admired movie stars in the world, who had brokered peace between them. Yet still he had persevered and had suffered neither one day of doubt nor 1 hour of depression. The total destruction of the Hands of Mercy affected him more negatively than any previous setback, in part because he had been much closer than ever before to triumph, within easy reach of the absolute mastery of flesh, its creation and control. In truth, the fire itself and all the losses were not what shook his confidence. The identity of the arsonist. That's what brought him this low. The return of his first creation. The crude and lumbering beast who should have spent the past 2 centuries frozen in polar ice, seemed even less possible to him than that a gay clone could have undone him on the very brink of a glorious success. He realized that his speed had fallen under 20 miles per hour. This had happened twice before. Each time he accelerated, his mind drifted, and his speed fell again. Deucalion. What a pretentious name. Deucalion in Patrick Duchesne's kitchen, turning away from Victor and just gone. Merely a trick, of course, but quite a trick. Deucalion, penetrating the Hands of Mercy without setting off an alarm. In just a few days, Harker giving birth to some monstrosity, William chewing off his fingers, Christine confused about her identity, Werner's catastrophic cellular metamorphosis, the apparent incorporation of the entire Mercy staff into the Werner thing, the freeing of Chameleon, Erica 4 destroying the Karloff experiment in psychic control, now Erica 4 supposedly back from the dead, those two detectives somehow escaping Benny and Cindy Lovewell, two superb assassins. The list of unlikely incidents went on and on. It all meant something. So many things could not go wrong spontaneously. A pattern waited to be discovered. A pattern that might well reveal a conspiracy, a cabal. Occasionally Victor thought that he might have a mild tendency toward paranoia, but in this instance he knew his suspicion must be correct. This time, the setback felt different from all before it. What brought him to the brink of ruin this time was not just a bar of soap on a stair or an amorous clone. A symphony of troubles required an orchestra of enemies and a determined conductor. This time, he might have to prepare for the worst. Again, he became aware that if the Mercedes lost more speed, it would be coasting. Ahead on the right loomed a rest area. He drove off the highway, braked to a stop, and put the car in park. Before he rushed heedlessly to the tank farm, he needed to brood about these recent events. He suspected that he was going to have to make the biggest decision of his life. He'd driven out of the storm, but as he stared at the dwindling cones of his headlight beams, the rain caught up to him again, and a groaning wind. Although Victor's powers of concentration were legendary among all who had worked with him, he found himself repeatedly distracted by the nonsensical apprehension that he might not be alone in the car. He was alone, of course, not just in the car, but alone in the world to a degree that he did not need to contemplate right now, when his mood was already dark. Chapter 59. Following the dumpsters and the landfill workers to the big hole in the west pit, Carson thought the procession appeared medieval. The vast reaches of the dump lay in a black pall, as though civilization remained centuries away from the electric era. The torchlight, the oil lamps, the atmosphere of a religious pilgrimage that arose from the sudden reverential silence of the group as they approached the entrance to the subterranean chapel of the Resurrector. Although armed with 2 handguns and an urban sniper, Carson felt defenseless in the face of this unknown. They arrived at a tunnel, approximately 8 feet in diameter, angling down into the depths of the pit, which apparently the being, the mother of all gone wrongs, had opened to present itself to them earlier this same night. Before they had set out, Carson asked Nick Frigg how deep the trash was piled. She was surprised to hear they were standing on almost 10 stories of garbage. Considering the substantial acreage dedicated to the dump, the Resurrector could have excavated many miles of corridors, and Frigg confirmed that they had explored an elaborate network of passageways that were but part of the entity's construction. The tightly compacted trash forming the walls of the passageway appeared to have been sealed with a transparent bonding material of sufficient strength to prevent collapse. Rippling currents and whirls of torchlight glistened across the shiny surface. She imagined that the Resurrector had exuded this glue, which seemed to imply that its nature was in part insectile. She couldn't easily accept that the busy, burrowing architect of this labyrinth and the compassionate transcendental being that lacked a thread of malevolence in its weave were one and the same. As they entered the tunnel, Carson expected the stink of the trash field to intensify and the air to become thick and bitter. But the glimmering sealant on the walls apparently held back the methane that otherwise would have suffocated them, and a draft flowed up from below. She had no more difficulty breathing here than on the surface, and the malodor was, if anything, less offensive. When she glanced back at Dog-Nosed Nick, his nostrils quivered and flared ceaselessly, and he smiled with pleasure. To his enhanced olfactory sense, The path of this pilgrimage was perfumed with a singular incense. Likewise for the Duke of Orleans. The gradual slope of the tunnel took them perhaps 10 feet below the surface by the point that they had walked 100 feet from the entrance. Here, the passageway turned sharply left and widened into a spacious gallery before seeming to curve down at a steeper angle. In this gallery, the resurrector waited, initially at the limits of their lights, half seen and mysterious. The width of the chamber allowed the procession to spread out, with a clear view for each. Carson glanced left, right, and saw that everyone but she and Michael appeared deeply affected by the presence before them, not enraptured, but certainly content, at peace, many with smiles on their faces, eyes shining. As they came side by side in a line, the being before them approached, shadows sliding away from it as the light seemed to enrobe it in spun gold. To her surprise, a sense of well-being came over Carson, and the foreboding to which she had clung swiftly dissipated. She knew as surely as she had known anything in her life that she would be safe here, that the resurrector was benevolent and a champion of their cause. She understood that this entity was broadcasting calming psychic waves of reassurance. It would never violate her sanctity by coming inside her mind, but was speaking to her in this manner as she might speak to it in words. Telepathically, without seeming to use language and seemingly without images, for none flashed through her mind, the resurrector somehow inculcated in her an understanding of how they would enter the tank farm, how the new race working there would be disabled, and how Victor might be captured, his reign of madness and his kingdom of terror brought finally to an end. During all of this, Carson slowly grew aware that she could not describe the resurrector in any specific detail. Her sense was that before her stood a thing of such unearthly beauty that angels could not outshine it, a beauty humble in its every part, yet so majestic in its complete effect that she was not merely enchanted, but also uplifted. Here was a beauty both of form and of spirit, a spirit of such immaculate intention and righteous confidence that Carson's own not inconsiderable courage, hope, and resolution were inspired to new heights. This was her sense, yes, but if asked to describe the form that aroused such soaring emotions in her, she could not have said whether it had 2 legs or 10, 1 head or 100, or none at all. She squinted, straining to make out even general contours, a basic biological architecture. But the resurrector proved to be so gloriously radiant that it shimmered just beyond the ability of her senses to define it. The torchlight in which the entity now stood seemed to cloak it in mystery more than had the shadows from which it first approached them. Carson's initial foreboding welled in her again and quickened into fright. Her heart began to race, and she heard her ragged breath catching in her throat. Then in a blink, and only for a blink, she saw the resurrector as it really was, a blasphemy, a hideous offense against nature, an abomination from which the mind recoiled in desperate defense of its sanity. One blink of paralyzing truth, and then again the radiance, the perception of beauty beyond the mind's capacity to fully understand, exquisite form without definition, virtue and righteousness in the flesh, kindness embodied, love materialized. Her fright washed away in a tide of benevolence. Her heart settled to an easy beat, and she found her breath again, and her blood did not run cold. Neither did the nape of her neck prickle. And she knew that regardless of the form of the resurrector, She was safe. She was safe. And it was a champion of their cause. Chapter 60. Jocko in the big car, not driving. The day would come. All he needed was the keys, and a booster pillow, and long sticks to work the floor pedals, and a reliable map, and somewhere to go. Until then, riding was good. Being driven was nice. Jocko's first car ride, he told Erica. How do you like it? Smooth, comfy, better than creeping through the night, scared of brooms and buckets. Rain rattled on the roof. Wipers flung big splashes off the windshield. Jocko sat dry, racing through the rain, but dry. In the night, wind shook trees, shook them hard, almost as hard as the crazy drunk hobo shook Jocko while shouting, "Get out of my dream, you creepazoid! Get out of my dream!" Wind slammed the car, hissed and grumbled at the window. Jocko smiled at the wind. Smiling felt good. It didn't look good. He smiled at a mirror once, so he knew how not good it looked, but it sure felt good. "You know what?" he said. "What?" "How long has Jocko not twirled or backflipped or nothing?" "Not since you've been sitting there." "How long is that?" "Over half an hour." "Amazing!" "Is that your record?" "Got to be. By like 27 minutes. Maybe having clothes relaxed Jocko. He liked pants. The way they covered up your flat butt and the knees that made people laugh. After the crazy drunk hobo stopped shaking Jocko, he shouted, spraying spit, "What the hell kind of knees are those? Those knees make me sick! Never saw knees make me sick before. You freak-kneed creepazoid!" Then the hobo vomited, just to prove Jocko's knees really were sick-making. Erica was a good driver, focused on the road, staring hard. She was thinking about driving, but something else, too, Jocko could tell. He could read her heart a little. His first night alive, he found some magazines. In a trash can, read them in an alleyway, under a lamp-post, smelled like cat pee. One article was called, "You Can Learn to Read Her Heart." You don't cut her open to read it, either. That was a relief. Jocko didn't like blood. Well, he liked it inside where you needed it, not outside where you could see it. Anyway, the magazine told Jocko how to read her heart. So now he knew something troubled Erica. Secretly he watched her, sneaking looks. Those delicate nostrils. Jocko wished he had those nostrils. Not those particular nostrils. He didn't want to take her nostrils. Jocko just wanted nostrils like them. "Are you sad?" Jocko asked. Surprised, she glanced at him, then back at the road. "The world is so beautiful." "Yeah, dangerous but pretty." "I wish I belonged in it," she said. "Well, we're here." "Being and belonging are different things." "Like alive and living," Jocko said. She glanced at him again but didn't reply, stared at the road, the rain, the wipers wiping. Jocko hoped he hadn't said something stupid, but he was Jocko. Jocko and stupid went together like Jocko and ugly. After a while he said, "Are there pants that make you smarter?" "How could pants make anyone smarter?" "Well, these made me prettier." "I'm glad you like them." Erica took her foot off the accelerator, eased down on the brake. As they stopped on the pavement, she said, "Jocko, look." He slid forward on his seat, craned his neck. Deer crossed the road, in no hurry. A buck, 2 does, a fawn. Others came out of dark woods on the left. The trees shook in the wind. The tall grass thrashed. But the deer were calm under the trembling trees, in the lashing grass, moving slowly but with purpose. They almost appeared to drift like weightless figures in a dream, serene. Their legs were so long and slender. They walked like dancers danced, each step precise, the grace. golden-brown coats on the does. The buck was brown. The fawn was colored like the does, but with white spots. Tails black on top, white underneath. Narrow, gentle faces. Eyes set on the sides of their faces to provide a panoramic view. Heads held high. Ears tipped slightly forward, they stared at the Mercedes, but only once each, not afraid. The fawn stayed near one of the does. Off the road once more, no longer directly in the headlight beams. It capered in a circle in the half-light, in the wet grass. Jocko watched the fawn caper in the wet grass. Another buck and doe, rain glistening on the male's antlers. Jocko and Erica watched in silence. There was nothing they could say. The sky black, the rain rushing, the dark woods, the grass, the many deer. There was nothing they could say. When the deer were gone, Erica drove north again. After a while she said softly, "Being and belonging." Jocko knew she meant the deer. "Maybe just being is enough. It's all so beautiful," Jocko said. Although she glanced at him, he didn't look at her. He couldn't bear to see her sad. "Anyway," he said, "if somebody doesn't belong in the world, there's no door they can throw him out. They can't take the world away from him and put him somewhere different. The worst thing they can do is kill him. That's all." After another silence, she said, "Little friend, you never stop surprising me." Jocko shrugged. "I read some magazines once."
Chapter 61. Victor was in the dark night of his soul, but he was also in a Mercedes S600, arguably the finest automobile in the world. The suit he wore had cost over $6,000, his wristwatch more than $100,000. He had lived 240 years, most of the time in high style, and he had known more adventure, more thrills, more power, and more triumphs of a more momentous nature than any man in history. As he considered his current situation and the possibility that he might die soon, he found that making the fateful decision he needed to make was easier than he had expected when he parked in this rest area. He had no choice but to take the most extreme action available to him, because if he died, the loss to the world would be devastating. He was too brilliant to die. Without him, the future would be bleak. Any chance of imposing order on a meaningless universe would die with him, and chaos would rule eternal. He used the voice-activated car phone to call the household staff dormitory at the estate in the Garden District. A beta named Ethel answered, and Victor told her to bring James to the phone at once. James had been third in the hierarchy of the staff, behind William and Christine, who were now both dead. He was next in line to be the butler. If Victor hadn't been so pressed by the events of the past 24 hours, he would have appointed James to his new post the previous day. When James came to the phone, Victor honored him with the news of his promotion and gave him his first assignment as butler. "And remember, James, follow the instructions I've just given you to the letter. I expect absolute perfection in everything a butler does, but most especially in this instance." After leaving his umbrella on the terrace and after thoroughly wiping his wet shoes with a cloth that he brought for that purpose, James entered the house on the first floor, by the back door at the end of the north hall. He carried the mysterious object that had obsessed him for the past 2 hours, a crystal ball. After proceeding directly to the library, as Mr. Helios had instructed, James carefully placed the gleaming sphere on the seat of an armchair. "Are you happy there?" he asked. The sphere did not reply. Frowning, James moved it to another armchair. "Better," the sphere told him. When the crystal ball initially spoke to him, 2 hours earlier, James had been minding his own business, sitting at the kitchen table in the dormitory, stabbing his hand with a meat fork and watching it repeatedly heal.
The fact that he healed so quickly and so well gave him reason to believe he would be all right, though for most of the day he had felt all wrong. The first thing the sphere said to him was, "I know the way to happiness." Of course, James had at once expressed a desire to know the way. Since then, the crystal ball had said many things, most of them inscrutable. Now it said, "Salted or unsalted, sliced or cubed, the choice is yours." "Can we get back to happiness?" James asked. "Use a knife and—" the sphere said. "And what?" James asked. "And fork." "What do you want me to do with a knife and fork?" "If peeled." "You're making no sense," James said accusingly. "A spoon," said the sphere. "Now it's a spoon?" "If halved and unpeeled." "What is the path to happiness?" James pleaded, because he was afraid to demand an answer and offend the sphere. "Long, narrow, twisting, dark," said the sphere. "For the likes of you, the path to happiness is one mean son of a bitch of a path." "But I can get there, can't I? Even one like me?" "Do you really want happiness?" asked the sphere. "Desperately. Doesn't have to be forever. Just for a while." "Your other choice is insanity." "Happiness. I'll take happiness." "Yogurt works with. Ice cream works with." "With what?" The sphere didn't reply. "I'm in a very bad way," James pleaded. Silence. Frustrated, James said, "Wait here. I'll be right back. I've got something to do for Mr. Helios." He found the hidden switch. A section of the bookcase pivoted, and the secret passageway was revealed. James glanced back at the sphere on the seat of the armchair. Sometimes it didn't look like a crystal ball. Sometimes it looked like a cantaloupe. This was one of those times. The sphere was a crystal ball only when the magic was in it. James feared that the magic might go out of it and never come back. In the secret passage, he came to the first door and removed all 5 steel bolts, as he had been instructed. When he opened the door, he saw the corridor that Mr. Helios had described: copper rods to the left, steel rods to the right, a low, ominous hum. Instead of going farther, James ran back to the start of the passageway, pushed the button to open the bookcase door from this side, and hurried to the sphere. "What is the path to happiness?" he asked. "Some people put a little lemon on it," said the crystal ball. "Put lemon on what?" "You know what your problem is." "What is my problem?" "You hate yourself." James had nothing to say to that. He returned to the secret passageway, but this time he took the crystal ball with him. Victor had asked James to phone him when the task was completed. Alternately consulting his world-class wristwatch and the dashboard clock of his magnificent sedan, he thought the new butler was taking too long. No doubt, awed by his promotion and by the realization that he would be speaking more often with his maker, James approached his mission with excessive care. As he waited for the butler's call, the conviction again rose in him that he was not alone in the Mercedes. This time, he turned to look in the back seat, knowing full well no one was there. He knew the cause of his edginess. Until James completed the task he had been sent to do, Victor remained mortal, and the world could be denied the shining future that only he could create. As soon as the butler reported completion of the job, Victor could proceed to the farm, face whatever threat might wait there, and be confident that the future would still be his. Chapter 62. Chameleon suspects deception. Once again, the puzzle smells like both an exempt and a target. The scent of an exempt is far and away stronger than that of a target, but the second scent is definitely present. The car has been stopped for some time, yet the puzzle does not get out. It sits in silence behind the wheel. After a while, the puzzle makes a phone call. Chameleon listens, hears nothing incriminating. But the puzzle talks about hidden doors and passageways, a hidden room. This suggests, but does not prove, bad behavior. Chameleon assumes the exempts are incapable of bad behavior, but its program is not clear on this point. It is permitted to act on assumptions, but they must be Class A assumptions, which in a rigorous application of logic must conform to at least 4 of 5 proofs. This assumption is Class C. Chameleon is capable of impatience. It has been a long time between kills. It remembers clearly 3 kills. They occurred during its testing phase. The pleasure is intense. The word Chameleon knows for the pleasure that comes from killing is orgasm. Its entire body spasms. In orgasm, it is as fully in touch with its body as it will ever be. But strangely, at the same time seems to escape its body, and for a minute or two is not itself, is not anything, is only pleasure. After the phone call, the puzzle sits in silence again. Chameleon was a long time in the cold, a long time in the imprisoning polymeric fabric sack. Now it is warm. Under the pleasing scent, the infuriating scent. Chameleon wants an orgasm. Chameleon wants an orgasm. Chameleon wants an orgasm. Chapter 63. Under the dump, Carson and Michael and Deucalion followed the landfill workers and the resurrected alphas along a passageway that branched off the main course. It would lead them out of the landfill and under the tank farm next door. Ahead of them, torchlight ignited faux fire across the glazed curves of the tunnel. Because they were at the end of the procession, an inky gloom pooled behind them. The resurrector was far in front. Perhaps it had already entered the main building at the tank farm. Carson had no concern about the darkness at her back. Here, in the warren of their monstrously strange accomplice, they were safer than they had been in a long time.
"What it does telepathically," Deucalion said, "is project its inner nature in order to screen from us its physical appearance, because it would be impossible for most people who see it to believe it's benign."
Like Carson, Deucalion and Michael had been suspicious of the telepathically projected image, and had been strong-willed enough to peer through the resurrector's radiant veil to the truth of its form. Deucalion had seen it twice, once for perhaps half a minute. Michael achieved only the brief glimpse that Carson had seen. In spite of his tendency toward cynicism, he was convinced that the creature could be trusted, that it was allied with them. If not, it could have killed us all back there, as big and powerful as it is.
"None of the landfill workers saw through its disguise, or even suspects there is one," Deucalion said. "I doubt that the Alphas, Erica 4 and the others, have any suspicion either. They and the Resurrector are of the same flesh that Victor engineered for the new race, and perhaps that renders them more susceptible than we are to its masquerade."
"I was plenty susceptible," Michael said. "I felt as if I was in an anteroom of heaven, getting a pep talk from an archangel while waiting for judgment." "Why make a thing that looks like that?" Carson wondered. Deucalion shook his head.
That it should look like that was not Victor's plan. Physiologically, it's a gone wrong. In its mind, in its intentions, it's a gone right.
The tunnel ceased to pass through compacted trash. Abruptly, its walls were formed of earth, coated with the glossy material that had sealed over the trash in the main passageway and in the first part of this one. The resurrector was a digger of considerable industry. "Will he really come here?" Carson wondered.
"He will,"
Deucalion assured her. "But Erica 4 says she's called him twice. He knows she's up here somewhere, reanimated. He knows something unprecedented must be happening." As Deucalion looked down at her, The light of the centuries-old storm throbbed through his eyes.
He'll come, nevertheless. He's got too much invested in the tank farm. A new crop birthing in less than 24 hours. Mercy gone, this is his best bet. He's arrogant and insanely certain of himself. Never forget the pride that drives him. Perhaps in all of history, there has been only one other whose pride was greater than Victor's.
Maybe the caffeine tide pulsing through Carson was brewing up new symptoms. Or maybe sleep deprivation torqued her mind in spite of the no-dose cola cocktails. Whatever the cause, a fresh anxiety began to pluck at her. She was not a seer, not a gypsy with one eye in the future, but a prickly intuition warned her that even if Victor died in the next few hours, the world he wanted to make was a world of which others dreamed as well, a world in which human exceptionalism was denied, in which the masses were regimented drones who served an untouchable elite, in which flesh was cheap. Even if Victor received justice and a grave in garbage, Carson and Michael were going to be making a life together in a world ever more hostile to freedom, to human dignity, to love. As they reached the hole that had been bored through concrete block and into the basement of the main building at the tank farm, Deucalion said,
"The first time I saw the Resurrector, before you two arrived, it told me, rather, it impressed on me in that wordless way it makes you know things, that it expects to die tonight, here or at the landfill."
Michael let his breath out in a hiss. "That doesn't sound like our side wins."
"Or," said Deucalion, "the creature may know that, in winning, sacrifices will have to be made."
Chapter 64. The blue laser scanned James, approved of him, and switched off the security feature that would have fried him crisp if he had been an unwelcome intruder. Carrying the crystal ball, he went to the second steel door. He put the sphere on the floor while he pulled the 5 lock bolts from their slots. "Try prosciutto," said the crystal sphere. "That's ham." "It works with—" "With what?" "I know the path to happiness," said the sphere. Voice tight with frustration, James said, "Then tell me." "Paper thin." "What does that mean?" "Serve it paper thin." The thick door swung open. James had been forbidden to enter the windowless Victorian drawing room. On his way out, he must leave the steel doors open, the exit route unobstructed. He remained obedient, even in his current state of distraction. Anyway, he had no interest in that room, not when happiness might be within his grasp. The crystal sphere said nothing on the way back to the library. From the library desk, James phoned Mr. Helios and reported that the task had been completed precisely according to instructions. The moment James hung up the phone, the sphere said, "You were not made for happiness." "But if you know the path—" "I know the path to happiness." "But you won't tell me?" "Also works with cheese," said the sphere. "So I'm not worthy of happiness? Is that it?" "You're just a meat machine." "I'm a person," James insisted. "Meat machine, meat machine." Furious, James threw the crystal ball to the floor, where it shattered, spilling a mass of slimy yellow seeds and revealing its orange inner flesh. He stared at it for a while, uncomprehending. When he looked up, he saw that someone had left a book on the desk. A History of the Troll in Literature. He picked it up with the intention of returning it to its proper place on the shelves. The book said, "I know the path to happiness." With renewed hope and excitement, James said, "Please tell me." "Do you deserve happiness?" "I believe I do. Why shouldn't I deserve it?" "There may be reasons." "Everyone deserves happiness." "Not everyone," said the book. "But let's talk about it." Chapter 65. As the GL 550 raced north in the rain, Jocko hoped for more deer. While he hoped, he thought about some things. Sometimes Jocko thought about big issues, usually in 2-minute segments, between activities. Big issues like why some things were ugly, some weren't. Maybe if everything was beautiful, nothing would be. People saw one thing, they swooned over it. They saw this other thing, they pounded it with sticks. Maybe there had to be variety for life to work. Swoon over everything, you get bored. Beat everything with a stick, boring. Personally, Jocko would be happy to swoon over everything. Jocko sometimes thought why he had no genitals. All Jocko had was that funny thing he peed with. It wasn't genitals. He called it his swoozle. Fortunately, it rolled up, folded away, when not in use. If it didn't fold out of sight, crazy drunk hobos would vomit about that too. One thing Jocko tried not to think about how how he was the only one of his kind. Too sad to think about. Jocko thought about it anyway. Jocko couldn't turn his mind off. It spun and somersaulted, like Jocko. Maybe that was why no genitals. No need for them. Not when you were one of a kind. Through all this thinking, Jocko secretly watched Erica. "Do you think about big issues?" Jocko asked. "Like what?" "Like things you don't have?" She was quiet so long, Jocko thought he screwed up again. Then she said, "Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to have a mother." Jocko slumped in his seat. "Jocko's sorry." "Sorry," he asked. "That's too hard. Don't think about it." "And what it's like to be a mother? I'll never know." "Why never?" "Because of how I'm made. Made to be used, not to be loved." "You'd be a great mother," Jocko said. She said nothing. Eyes on the road. Rain on the road. Rain in her eyes. "You would," he insisted. "You'd take care of Jocko real good." She kind of laughed. It was kind of a sob, too. "Way to go. Jocko speaks. People weep." "You're very sweet," she said. So maybe things weren't as bad as they seemed. Letting their speed drop, she said, "Isn't that Victor's car?" Or maybe things were worse than they seemed. Rising in his seat, he said, "Where?" "That rest area on the right. Yes, it's him." "Keep going." "I don't want him behind us. We have to get there separately from him, or I can't sneak you in." Erica pulled into the rest area, stopped behind Victor's sedan. "Stay here. Stay down." "You're getting out? It's raining." "We don't want him coming to us, do we?" She opened the door. After receiving confirmation that James had done as instructed, Victor took a few minutes to consider how he would approach the tank farm. Some of the new race who lived and worked at the farm might be breaking down in one way or another. He would need to be cautious, but he refused to be scared off. These were his creations, products of his genius, inferior to him in every way imaginable, and they could no more frighten him than one of Mozart's concertos could have terrified the composer, than a painting by Rembrandt could have sent the artist screaming into the night. They would submit to him or hear the death phrase. He foresaw no chance that anything like the Werner abomination would greet him at the farm. Werner had been a singularity. And where was it now? Vaporized with everything else in the hands of mercy. No rebellion against Victor could hope to succeed, not only because his power was that of the mythic gods, but also because the smartest of the alphas was an idiot by comparison with its maker, he on whom the centuries took no toll. Erica 4, an alpha, would be no match for him. He had killed her once with only a silk necktie and the power of his hands, and he could kill her again if the bitch had in fact been revived. An alpha, a woman, and a wife. She was 3 times inferior to him. He would delight in the opportunity to punish her for the impudence of those 2 phone calls. If she thought she had been cruelly treated in her first life, in her second, he would teach her what cruelty really was. He had no fear of going to the tank farm. He seethed with desire to be there and to rule this new kingdom with a ferocious discipline that would allow no repeat of the hands of mercy. As he reached to release the parking brake, a vehicle appeared on the highway, approaching from the south. Instead of passing, it parked behind him, flooding the interior of the sedan with light. His mirrors presented too few details, so he turned in his seat to look through the back window. Erica 5 was behind the wheel of the GL 550, which he had ordered her to drive to the farm. Staring back at her, furious with her because she looked like the impudent and insulting Erica 4, Victor saw nothing in the back seat, but he heard something move there. In the instant, he knew why he had felt that he was not alone. Chameleon. The new raced pheromones with which he had doused himself would provide hours of protection, except that, in moments of exertion, when a light sweat might be broken, in moments of rage or fear, his true scent would grow riper and might be detected under the new race disguise. Victor flung open the driver's door and plunged out of the car, into the night, into the rain. The downpour would fade the scent of his own pheromones, but it would more effectively wash away the odor of the new race, which was only sprinkled on his suit. He should have slammed the door, locked it remotely, abandoned the sedan, and gone to the farm with Erica. But he no longer dared approach the open driver's door, because Chameleon might already have scrambled into the front seat. Worse, it already might be out of the sedan, on rest area pavement immediately around him. The ceaseless dance of raindrops on the blacktop would entirely conceal the telltale ripple of Chameleon in motion. Inexplicably, Erica seemed to have gotten out of the GL even an instant before he had vacated the S600. At his side, sensing trouble, she said, "Victor, what's wrong?" Erica told Jocko, "Stay down." She said it like a scolding mother. She would be a good mother, but wasn't Jocko's mother. Nobody was. Jocko raised his head, saw Erica and Victor together, instantly soaked by rain. More interesting was the bug, the biggest bug Jocko ever saw, half as big as Jocko. This one didn't look tasty, looked bitter. In the storm drain, bugs came close to Jocko, easy to catch. Bugs didn't know his big yellow eyes could see them in the dark. Something wrong with this bug, besides being so big. Suddenly Jocko knew, the way it sneaked, the way it started to rear up. This bug would kill. Pillowcase, on the floor, in front of his seat. Slip the knot in the shoelace. Inside, soap, soap, soap. The knife. Quick, quick, quick. Jocko in the rain, capering toward Erica and Victor. Don't pirouette. Chapter 66. The bug didn't want to die. Neither did Jocko. Everything going so well. Soap, his first ride in a car, someone to talk to, his first pants. Nobody hit him for hours. Soon a funny hat. So of course a giant killer bug shows up. Jocko luck. 2 ripping claws, 1 crushing claw, 6 pincers, stinger, reciprocating saw for a tongue, teeth behind the first teeth. Everything but a flame-spitting hole. Oh, there it was. A bug born to be bad. Jocko dropped on it with both knees, stabbed, slashed, ripped, tore, picked the bug up, slammed it down, slammed it again, slammed it, more stabbing, fierce, unrelenting. Jocko scared himself. The bug squirmed, tried to wriggle away, but it didn't fight back, and it died. Puzzled by the bug's pacifism, Jocko got to his feet. Maybe the sight of Jocko paralyzed it with terror. Jocko stood in the driving rain, breathless, dizzy. Rain snapping on his bald head, Lost the baseball cap. Ah, standing on it. Erica and Victor seemed speechless. Gasping, Jocko said, "Bug." Erica said, "I couldn't see it until it was dead." Jocko triumphant, heroic. His time had come. His time at last, to shine. Victor skewered Jocko with his stare. "You could see it?" The cap's expansion strap was hooked around Jocko's toes. Wheezing, Jocko said to Erica, "It was gonna kill you." Victor disagreed. "It's programmed to spare anyone with a scent of new race flesh. Of we three, it would have killed only me." Jocko had saved Victor from certain death. Victor said, "You're of my flesh, but I don't know you." Stupid, stupid, stupid. Jocko wanted to lie down in front of one of the cars and drive over himself. "What are you?" Victor demanded. Jocko wanted to beat himself with a bucket. "Who are you?" Victor pressed. Trying to shake the cap off his foot, panting, Jocko said without the desired force, "I am the child of Jonathan Harker." He raised the knife. The blade had broken off in the bug. "He died to birth me." "You're the parasitical second self that developed spontaneously from Harker's flesh." "I am a juggler." "Juggler?" "Never mind," said Jocko. He dropped the handle of the knife, furiously kicked his foot, cast off the cap. "I will need to study your eyes," said Victor. "Sure, why not?" Jocko turned away. Skip, skip, skip forward, hop backward, skip, skip, skip forward, hop backward, twirl. As she watched the troll pirouetting across the blacktop, Erica wanted to hurry to him, halt him, give him a hug, and tell him that he was very brave. Victor said, "Where did he come from?" "He showed up at the house a little while ago. I knew you'd want to examine him." "What is he doing?" "It's just a thing he does." "I'll find answers in him," Victor said. "Why they're changing form, why the flesh has gone wrong. There's much to learn from him." "I'll bring him to the farm." "The eyes are a bonus," Victor said. "If he's awake when I dissect the eyes, I'll have the best chance of understanding how they function." She watched Victor walk to the open door of the S-600. Before getting into the car, he looked again at the skipping, hopping, twirling troll, and then at Erica. "Don't let him dance away into the night." "I won't. I'll bring him to the farm." As Victor got into the sedan and drove out of the rest area, Erica walked into the middle of the roadway. Wind tore the night, ripped rain from the black sky, shook the trees as if to throttle the life from them. The world was wild and violent and strange. The troll walked on his hands down the center line of the highway. When she could no longer hear the S-600 above the wind roar, Erica glanced back, watching the distant taillights until they were out of sight. The troll capered in a serpentine pattern, lane to lane, pausing now and then to spring off the pavement and kick his heels together. Wind danced with the night, anointed the earth with rain, inspired the trees to celebrate. The world was free and exuberant and wondrous. Erica rose onto the points of her toes, spread her arms wide, took a deep breath of the wind, and stood for a moment in expectation of the twirl. Chapter 67. As the landfill was encircled by a formidable fence, so was the tank farm. Instead of 3 staggered rows of loblolly pines, there were clusters of live oaks festooned with moss. The sign at the entry gate identified the resident corporation as Gegenangriff, German for counterattack, Victor's little joke, as his life was dedicated to an assault against the world. The main building covered over 2 acres, a 2-story brick structure with clean modern lines. Because every policeman, public official, and bureaucrat in the parish was a replicant, he'd had no trouble with building code requirements, building inspections, or government approvals. He opened the rolling iron gate with his remote control and parked in the underground garage. The experience at the rest area had blown away the last clinging doubts that made him wary of returning to the farm. He'd been spared from a murderous creation of his own, Chameleon, by the mutant being that had evolved out of Jonathan Harker, who himself was one of the new race. To Victor, this strongly suggested, nay, confirmed beyond question, that the entire new race enterprise was so brilliantly conceived and so powerfully executed that within it had evolved a system of synchronicity that would ensure that errors in the project, if any, would self-correct. Carl Jung, the great Swiss psychologist, had theorized that synchronicity, a word he invented for remarkable coincidences that have profound effects, is an acausal connecting principle that can in strange ways impose order on our lives. Victor enjoyed Jung's work, though he would have liked to rewrite all the man's essays and books, to bring to them a far greater depth of insight than poor Carl possessed. Synchronicity was not integral to the universe, as Carl believed, but sprang up only during those certain periods in certain cultures when human endeavor was as close to fully rational as it would ever get. The more rational the culture, the more likely that synchronicity would arise as a means of correcting what few errors the culture committed. Victor's implementation of the new race and of his vision for a unified world was so rational, was worked out in such exquisitely logical detail, that a system of synchronicity evolved within it while he wasn't looking. Something had gone wrong with the creation tanks at the hands of Mercy, without any indication to Victor. And before more imperfect new race models could be produced, Deucalion appeared after 2 centuries to burn down the facility. An incredible coincidence indeed. Deucalion assumed that he was destroying Victor, when instead he was preventing more flawed models of the new race from being produced, forcing Victor to use only the vastly improved creation tanks at the farm. Synchronicity had corrected the error, and no doubt synchronicity would deal with Deucalion as well, and clean up other minor annoyances, Detectives O'Connor and Maddison among others, that might otherwise inhibit Victor in his ever more rapid march toward absolute dominance of all things. With Victor's unstoppable drive for power, with his singular intellect, with his cold materialism and his ruthless practicality, and now with synchronicity on his side, he had become untouchable, immortal. He was immortal. He took the elevator from the parking garage to the tank fields on the main floor. When the doors opened and he stepped through, he found the entire staff, 62 of the new race, waiting for him, as throughout the ages commoners have gathered along streets to bask in the glory of passing royalty, or to honor great political leaders whose courage and commitment those drudges of the proletariat could never hope to match. Having stood in the rain while the synchronistic Harker mutant had killed Chameleon, Victor was disheveled as no one had ever seen him. On any other day, he might have been keenly annoyed to be seen in a sodden and rumpled suit, with his hair disarranged. But in this hour of his transcendence, the condition of his wardrobe and hair did not matter, because his elevation to immortality was clearly evident to this audience, his radiance undiminished. How they goggled at him, abashed by his wisdom and knowledge, mortified by their ignorance, overawed by his godlike power. Raising his arms and spreading them wide, Victor said, "I understand the awe in which you hold your Maker, but always remember that the best way to honor him is to bend more diligently to his work. Give of yourselves as never before. Commit every fiber of your being to the fulfillment of his vision." As they came forward, Victor realized that they intended to lift him high and bear him to his office, as throughout history so many enraptured crowds had borne returning heroes through streets to halls of honor. Previously, he would have chastised them for wasting his time and their own, but perhaps this once, considering the momentous nature of the day's events and of his ascendance to the company of the immortals, he would indulge them, because allowing them to attend him in this way, he would surely be inspiring them to greater efforts on his behalf. Chapter 68. Jocko in despair, rain-soaked, feet pulled up on the passenger seat, thin arms around his legs, baseball cap turned backward. Erica behind the wheel, not driving, staring at the night. Victor not dead. Should be, but not. Jocko not dead. Should be, but not. Total screw-up. Jocko is never gonna eat another bug, Jocko said. She just stared at the night, said nothing. Jocko wished she would say something. Maybe she would do the right thing, beat Jocko to death. He deserved it. But no, she was too nice. Typical Jocko luck. There were things he could do. Put down the power window, stick his head out, power the window up, cut off his head. Erica said, "I'm programmed for obedience. I've done things I knew he wouldn't approve of, but I haven't actively disobeyed him." Jocko could take off his t-shirt, tear it in strips, pack strips in his nose, roll up his cap, stuff it down his throat, suffocate. "Something's happened to me tonight," she said. "I don't know. Maybe I could drive right by the farm. Maybe just drive and drive forever." Jocko could go into woods, prick a thumb, wait for wild pigs to smell blood, come and eat him. But I'm afraid to pop the parking brake and drive. What if I can't pass the place? What if I pull in there? What if I'm not even able to let you go free on your own? Jocko raised one hand. "May I say?" "What is it?" "Jocko wonders if you have an ice pick." "Why do you need an ice pick?" "Do you have one?" "No." "Never mind." She leaned forward, forehead on steering wheel, closed her eyes, made a thin, sad sound. "Should be possible to commit suicide with a tire jack. Think about it. Think. Think." "May I say?" "Say what?" "See Jocko's ear?" "Yes." "Is ear hole big enough he could fit in the end of your tire jack?" "What in the world are you talking about?" "Never mind." With sudden determination, she released the parking brake, put the 515 gear, drove out of the rest area. "Are we going somewhere?" Jocko asked. "Somewhere." "Will we go past a high cliff?" "No, not on this road." "Will we cross any train tracks?" "I'm not sure. Why?" "Never mind." Chapter 69. As Victor consented to the attentions of the adoring crowd, he realized that in addition to the staff of the tank farm, Deucalion was also present, and Detectives O'Connor and Maddison as well. How brilliant he had been to foresee that very soon synchronicity would restore balance to his world, correct all errors by the mechanism of astonishing coincidence. The very presence of his first maid and the detectives confirmed his elevation to the status of an immortal, and he looked forward to seeing by what meaningful coincidence they would be killed. He still carried a pistol in a shoulder rig under his suit coat, but it would be beneath him to shoot the trio himself, for he was now not merely the singular genius he had always been, but also such a paragon of reason and logic that the most powerful forces in the universe operated for his benefit. Self-defense was a necessity of the common herd, of which he had never been a member, and from which he was now even farther removed. Synchronicity and no doubt other recondite mechanisms would come to his assistance in dazzling and unexpected ways. Many hands lifted him off the floor, and he thought his people might carry him seated upright on their shoulders, like a Chinese emperor of old was transported aloft in an ornate chair, might carry him to his office, where the great work would continue, greater even than everything he had heretofore accomplished. But in their zeal, in their earnest enthusiasm to celebrate their Maker, they pulled him supine, and 2 phalanxes of bearers supported him between them, on their shoulders, so he faced the ceiling unless he turned his head to one side or the other. Their grips on his ankles, legs, wrists, and arms were firm, and their strength was more than adequate to the task, because he made his people strong and engineered them with endurance, the endurance of good machines. Suddenly his bearers were on the move, and the many others crowded close, perhaps hoping they might be able to touch him, or hoping that he might turn his head toward them and look upon them, so that they could say years hence that they had been here on this historic day, and that he had met their eyes and knew them and smiled. The atmosphere was festive, and many seemed jubilant, which was not a mood easily achieved by the new race, considering their programming. Then Victor realized that they were future-focused on the triumphs their master would achieve in this new facility, looking forward to the day, now so much closer, when the relentless killing of the hated old race would begin. This must be the source of their jubilation, the prospect of genocide, the scourging from the world of every last human being to ever have spoken of God. Evidently they had more in mind than just transporting him to his desk, because although his office was on the main floor, they carried him down 2 flights of stairs as effortlessly as across flat terrain. They must have some special honor in mind. And though Victor had no need for the approval of their kind, had no desire, in fact, for the approval of anyone, he was now committed to the tedium that such a ceremony would no doubt involve. But then something occurred that made the moment interesting again. The celebratory atmosphere faded, and a hush fell upon the crowd. It seemed to him that reverence was the mood of the moment, which of course was more suited to an occasion when such as they would honor one of Victor's exalted position. Reverence indeed, for torches were lit, apparently saturated with a spiced oil that produced a fragrance as pleasant as that of incense. Warming to his role as the object of devotion, he turned his head left and right, allowing them to see his face more than just in profile. And during one of these dispensations of his grace, he saw Erica in the crowd, smiling, and he was disposed to smile at her as well, for she had brought with her the creature born of Harker, which had saved him from Chameleon, although at the moment that dwarfish mutant was not to be seen. Now they entered a passageway of raw earth, glistening as if with lacquer, and he was reminded of the raw earth of yawning graves in a prison cemetery so long ago, dickering with the hangman at the brink of the hole. He was reminded of the raw earth of mass graves across the world over the years, where the executioners allowed him to cull from the doomed herd those for whom he might have a use in his experiments. How grateful the rescued always were to him, until that moment in the lab when they realized why they had been saved, and then they cursed him, unable to appreciate, in their cow-stupid way, what an opportunity he had given them, this chance to be part of history. He used them hard and used them well, whether as laborers or subjects of experiment. No other scientist ever born could have used them half as well, and therefore their contribution to posterity was immensely more than they could have made by their own wits. From the passage with earthen walls, they proceeded into a most unusual corridor. Overhead, not a foot in front of his face, spread an inventive decoupage of crushed cracker boxes, myriad cereal boxes, flattened soup cans, packages that had once contained antihistamines and suppositories and laxatives, tangles of frayed rope, a worn-out slipper, red, white, and blue political posters proclaiming the right, the need, the duty to vote. a soiled platinum blonde wig, crushed skeletons of long dead rats, a garland of red Christmas tinsel as sinuous as a boa, a doll with a smashed face and one staring eye, the other socket empty. After the doll's face, he lost sight of the lacquered montage past which he was carried, and saw instead 1,000 faces exhumed from his memory, broken faces and startled faces, and bloody faces and faces half peeled back from the bone, the faces of men and women and children, those whom he had used and used so well, and not merely 1,000, but 2,000, multitudes. They didn't frighten him, but filled him with contempt, for he despised the weak who would let him use them. They thrilled him because he had always been thrilled by his power to bring others to the realization that they were nothing but meat, to strip from them their fragile defenses, their trust in justice, their childish illusions that they mattered, their delusions of meaning, their idiot faith, their hope, and even their sense of self, until in the end they wanted to be nothing but meat, unthinking meat, and sick of life. When faces from the past stopped cascading through his mind, he found that he had been carried out of the passageway into a gallery with a floor curved like a bowl. This seemed to be their destination, for here they stopped. When they brought him off their shoulders and put him on his feet, he stood bewildered, because every face in the crowd was now that of a stranger. "So many faces," he said, "tumbling through my mind like blown leaves moments ago. Now I can't recall one of them, or who they were, or who you are." A terrible confusion overcame him. "Or my face. How do I appear? What name do I go by?" Then out of the crowd stepped a giant, the right half of this face badly broken, and the damage only half disguised by an intricate tattoo. Looking at the wholesome side of the face, he sensed that he had known this man before, and then he heard himself say, "Why, you are one of my children, come home at last." The tattooed man said, "You were never a madman during any moment of your diabolical work. You were wicked from the moment of your first intention, rotten with pride, your every desire venomous and unwholesome, your every act corrupt, your arrogance unbridled, your cruelty inexhaustible, your soul bargained away for power over others, your heart empty of feeling. You were evil, not mad, and you thrived on evil. It was your sustenance. Now I will not permit you to escape awareness of the justice you receive. I will not let you escape into insanity, because I have the power to hold you to the reality of your vicious life." The giant put a hand upon the head of the insane, and at the touch, the madness blinked away, and Victor knew again who he was, where he was, and why he had been brought here. He reached for the to the reality of your vicious life. The giant put a hand upon the head of the insane, and at the touch, the madness blinked away, and Victor knew again who he was, where he was, and why he had been brought here. He reached for the pistol under his jacket, but the giant caught his hand and broke his fingers in a crushing grip. Chapter 70. Erica 5 wheeled the SUV to the curb and stopped a few yards short of the entrance to the tank farm, Giganangriff Incorporated. What little character the building possessed was faded by the darkness and the rain. "How nondescript the place looks," she said. "Why, It might be anything or nothing much at all. The troll was sitting up straight in his seat. Usually busy with elaborating gestures or making meaningless rhythms, his hands were still, folded on his chest.
Jocko understands.
What do you understand, Jocko?
If you have to take him in there, Jocko understands.
You don't want to go in there.
It's okay. Whatever. Jocko doesn't want you in trouble.
Why do you owe me anything? She asked.
You were kind to Jocko.
We've known each other only one night.
You squeezed a lot of kindness into one night.
Not that much.
The only kindness Jocko ever knew.
After a mutual silence, she said, You ran. You were faster than me. I lost you.
He wouldn't believe that.
Go. Just go, Jocko. I can't take you in there with me. His yellow eyes were no less eerie and no less beautiful than when she had first seen them.
Where would Jocko go?
There's a whole beautiful world.
And none of it wants Jocko.
Don't go in there and let him carve you up, she said. You're more than meat.
So are you. So much more than meat.
She couldn't look at him. It wasn't the ugliness that was hard to take. His vulnerability broke both her hearts, and his humility, and his brave little soul. The pull of the program is strong, she said. The command to obey, like a riptide.
If you go in, Jocko goes in.
No.
Jocko shrugged. You can't choose for Jocko.
Please, Jocko, don't put this on me.
May I say?
When she nodded, he said,
Jocko could know what it's like to have a mother, and you could know what it's like to be one. It would be a little family, but still a family.
Chapter 71. In the subterranean gallery, Victor stood at the center of the crowd, determined that this ignorant rabble would never hear him ask for mercy or concede the truth of their accusations. He realized that the employees of the landfill were here, and several alphas he had terminated, somehow revived. Erica IV came to him out of the mob, stood face to face and met his eyes, and was not cowed. She raised a fist as if to hit him, but lowered it without striking. I am not as low as you, she said, and turned away. And here was Carson O'Connor, Maddison, standing behind her with a hand on her shoulder, a German shepherd at her side. She said, Don't bother lying to me. I know my father saw something that got him on your case. You ordered your zombies to kill him and my mother. I killed them both myself, Victor said, and he begged like a little boy for his life. She smiled and shook her head. He begged for my mother's life, I'm sure. He would humble himself for her, but he never begged for his own. Rot in hell. The book taunted James as much as did the crystal ball. He paced the Helios mansion library with growing frustration. I know the path to happiness, said the book. I swear you say that one more time, I'll tear you to pieces. I will tell you the path to happiness. So tell me. You better have a drink first, said the book. In a corner of the library was a wet bar. James put the book down long enough to pour a double shot of whiskey and toss it back. When he picked up the volume once more, it said, Maybe you would be better off just going back to the dormitory. Tell me the path to happiness, James insisted. Go back, sit at the kitchen table, and stab your hand with the meat fork. Watch it heal. Tell me the path to happiness. You seem to be enjoying the meat fork. Through his exchanges with the magic book since he downed the whiskey, James had been looking in the back bar mirror, not at the volume in his hands. By his reflection, he discovered that both voices were his and that the book, as perhaps the crystal ball before it, did not talk at all. Tell me the path to happiness, James insisted. And in the mirror he saw himself say, "For you, the only path to happiness is death." The montage of decoupaged garbage flowed over the walls and the floor of the huge subterranean gallery. The place was more mysterious than any Victor had known before. In the center of the room, a grave had been prepared, 10 feet long, 6 feet wide, 20 feet deep. Beside this excavation stood the immense pile of garbage that came from it, a festering heap of rotten materials of sundry kinds. After they chained his hands behind his back, as they escorted him to the grave, he spoke the death phrase, but none of them fell dead. Somehow they had been freed. Nick Frigg, boss of the dump, buckled a metal collar around Victor's neck, and Victor did not beg. A lowly epsilon attached a cable to the collar. Victor supposed that the cable ran all the way to the surface, drawing juice from the dump's main power. "I will not beg," he told them. "You owe your existence to me, and when I die, so will every creature I have made." The crowd stared at him in silence. They neither called him a liar nor asked him to explain. "I am not bluffing," he warned them. "My altered body has its cables winding through it, as you know. I receive an electric charge regularly, store it in power cells within my torso, convert it to another life-sustaining energy as I need it. Many of you know this to be true." He saw that they did know. "When I die, those cells will be tapped to send a signal that would be relayed by satellite to everyone made of new raced flesh, to every meat machine that walks, and you will fall down dead." They appeared convinced, yet not one spoke. Victor smiled, anticipating triumph in spite of their silence. "Did you think a god would die alone?" "Not a god as cruel as you," Deucalion said. When several in the crowd cried out that he should be cast into the pit, Victor promised them a new beginning, reparations, freedom, but they would not listen, the fools, the ignorant swine. Suddenly, from behind the mountain of garbage beside the grave, a creature of great radiant beauty appeared. Oh, graceful it was, its form exquisite, its nature mysterious yet beguiling in every aspect, and he could see that the crowd, too, was in awe of it. But when he appealed to it, asking it to persuade the crowd to have mercy, the being changed. Over him now loomed a beast that even he, Victor Frankenstein, in his ferocious quest for absolute control of human biology, could never have imagined. This thing was so hideous, so monstrous, so suggestive of chaos and violence in every smallest detail, that Victor could neither repress a scream nor prevent it from escalating wildly. The beast approached. Victor retreated to the brink. Only when he fell into the foulness at the bottom of the grave did he realize with what putrid materials his last bed had been so richly prepared. Above, the hateful presence began to push the heaped garbage back into the pit from which it had been extracted. Every foulness imaginable rained down on Victor, drove him to his knees in the even greater foulness under him. And as an avalanche of suffocating filth poured onto him, something spoke within his mind. Its message was not in words or images, appeared instead as a sudden dark knowledge that was at once translatable. Welcome to hell. Erica 4 watched as the radiant and enchanting resurrector moved back from the great landslide of garbage that it had instigated, and Deucalion threw the switch that delivered a death jolt to Victor at the bottom of his final resting place. She looked around at all the new race and said, "Peace at last." And they replied as one, "Peace." Half a minute later, the resurrector and everyone in the gallery fell dead as stones, except Deucalion, Carson, Michael, and Duke, who were not creatures of the new race flesh. In the SUV in front of the tank farm, Erica 5 had a sudden premonition of death and reached out to Jocko. From his tortured expression, she knew that the same premonition had stricken him, and he grasped hold of her. In the instant that they clasped hands, the storm that had thus far been without pyrotechnics abruptly exploded with lightning. The sky flared violently, and the focus of nature's sudden fury seemed to be the GL-550. Barrages of thunderbolts slammed into the pavement around the vehicle, so numerous and so perfectly encircling that from every window nothing could be seen of the night or the land or the tank farm, only a screen of light so bright that Jocko and Erica bowed their heads. And though neither of them spoke, they both heard the same 3 words and somehow knew that the other had heard them as well. Be not afraid. Deucalion turned to Carson and Michael.
You pledged to fight at my side, and fight you did. The world has gained a little time. We destroyed the man, but his ideas did not die with him. There are those who would deny free will to others, and there are too many willing to surrender their free will, in every sense of its meaning.
Busting bad guys is easy, Carson said, compared to fighting bad ideas. Fighting ideas? That's a life's work. Deucalion nodded.
So let's live long lives.
Making the Star Trek greeting sign, Michael said, and prosper. Picking up Duke as if he were a lapdog, the giant cradled the shepherd in his right arm, and with his left hand rubbed its tummy.
I'll walk with you to the surface. Bring Arnie from Tibet, then it's goodbye. I need to find a new retreat where I can say my thanks and think about these 200 years and what they've meant.
And maybe we could see the coin trick once more, Michael said. Deucalion regarded them both in silence for a moment.
I could show you how it's done. Such knowledge would be safe in your hands.
Carson knew that he meant not just the coin trick, but all that he knew and could do. No, my friend, we're ordinary people. Such power should remain with someone extraordinary. They walked together to the surface, where the wind had blown and the rain had washed the first light of dawn into the eastern sky. In the windowless Victorian room, the reddish-gold substance, whether liquid or gas, drained from the glass casket, and the form that had been a shapeless shadow resolved into a man. When the empty case opened like a clamshell, the naked man swung into a sitting position, then stepped onto the Persian carpet. The satellite relayed signal had been a death sentence to all the other meat machines made by Victor, but by design it had not killed this one, but instead freed him. He walked out through the open steel doors that would have kept him contained if by mistake he'd been animated before he was wanted. James lay dead in the library. Upstairs he found Christine dead in the vestibule of the master suite. The house was quiet and otherwise apparently deserted. In Victor's bathroom he showered. In the mirrored alcove in the corner of Victor's walk-in closet, he admired his body. No metal cables wove through it, and he did not bear the scars of 2 centuries. He was physical perfection. After dressing, he took a briefcase to the walk-in safe. There he discovered that some valuables were not where they should have been, but other drawers offered all that he needed. He would leave the mansion on foot. He was so wary of having any connection with Victor Helios that he would not even use one of the cars merely to abandon it at the airport. Before he left, he set the Dresden countdown for half an hour. Both the house and the dormitory would soon be ashes. He wore a raincoat with a hood, aware of the irony of departing in garb reminiscent of the great brute's current costume. Although he was the very image of Victor Frankenstein, he was not in fact the man, but instead a clone. By virtue of direct-to-brain data downloading, however, his memory matched Victor's, all 240 years of it, except for the events of the past 18 hours or so, which was the last time Victor had conducted a memory update for him by phone transmission. He was like Victor also in that he shared Victor's vision for the world. This was not precisely personal immortality, but an acceptable substitute. In a fundamental way, the recently deceased and this recently born individual were different. This Victor was stronger, quicker, and perhaps even more intelligent than the original. Not perhaps. Most definitely more intelligent. He was the new and improved Victor Frankenstein, and the world needed him now more than ever. Chapter 72. This world is a world of stories, of mystery and enchantment. Everywhere you look, if you look close enough, a tale of wonder is unfolding. For every life is a narrative, and everyone a character in his or her own drama. In San Francisco, the O'Connor-Maddison Detective Agency not long ago celebrated its first year. They were a success almost from the day they opened for business. A hand laid on him by a tattooed healer has brought Arnie out of autism. He works in the office after school, doing some filing and learning hard-boiled lingo. Duke adores him. 7 months from now, a baby will complicate the sleuthing. But that's what they make infant carriers for. Hang the kid on the chest or sling him from the back, and there's no reason not to keep pursuing truth, justice, bad guys, and good Chinese food. In a small house on a large property in rural Montana, Erica has discovered a talent for motherhood, and she is fortunate to have, in Jocko, a perpetual child. Thanks to what she took from Victor's safe, they have all the money they will ever need. They don't travel, and only she goes into town, because they don't want to have to deal with all the brooms and buckets. The local birds, however, have gotten used to him, and he's never feeling pecked anymore, in any sense. He has a collection of funny hats, all with bells, and she has developed a contagious laugh. They don't know why only they survived, of all those made of new race flesh, but it had something to do with the lightning. So every night, when she tucks him in, she makes him say his prayers, as she does too, before she sleeps. At St. Bartholomew's Abbey, in the great mountains of Northern California, Deucalion resides as a guest, while he considers becoming a postulant. He enjoys all the brothers, and has a special friendship with Brother Knuckles. He has learned much from Sister Angela, who runs the Associated Orphanage, and the disabled children there think he is the best Santa Claus ever. He does not try to envision his future. He waits for it to find him.